All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the gaslighting course. Making sure I'm in this little bubble here. Um, from Love and Sex on the Rocks, Intimate Insights. Been getting a lot of questions about this. So I figured we'll do a little mini. And if we want to get more in depth, we'll definitely talk about that more. I think what's really tricky about gaslighting is that there's sometimes an element of truth, or you want to make sure that you're being understanding and you're taking feedback and you kind of take it into heart, but then you're really confused and questioning yourself. You're like, wait, am I bugging? Is really the thing. You have this feeling like, what's going on here? It has you questioning your reality. So we're going to go over that right now. So we're going to cover what gaslighting actually is, what it looks like when you're dating, why people gaslit. There are reasons. What makes it really tricky to recognize? It's not as glaringly obvious as some may think. How to respond and what healing looks like. We want to make sure y'all stay woke out there. All right. So, gaslighting is when someone makes you question your own perception, emotions, or memory. It's meant to create confusion, self doubt, and dependence. It happens in all relationships, um, all relationships, including family, definitely at the workplace, and definitely romantic. So, while we're focusing on, romantic relationships right now, it happens all over the place. And again, the biggest one is the am I bugging feeling. That's like one of the quickest ways to be like, I may be getting gaslit, right? When they have you kind of questioning your reality. Okay, so when folks are like, you're being dramatic, that never happened, you're imagining things, I think you're being a little paranoid, I think you're being a little insecure, or I think you're just anxious, overreacting. These are all signs that someone has you questioning your reality, right? Because if that is your feeling, that is your experience, that in and of itself is valid. So instead of someone meeting you with curiosity, they're telling you that your experience is wrong. Big, big red flag. Okay, so what it looks like while you're dating. So again, you're second guessing things that you were very sure about. The person is rewriting arguments to make it seem like it's your fault, and you find yourself constantly apologizing to keep the peace, even though you know that what you experience is real. So, an example is Maya notices that every time she brings up a concern, Dre says she's too much or ruining the vibe. Eventually, she starts second guessing herself. So, instead of her issues being taken seriously and Dre being curious and wanting to learn and make the relationship better, Dre is more like, we're having a good old time. Why are you bringing negativity to that? And that happens a lot. So keep an eye out there if you find that with the folks that you are dating. Excuse me. So why do people gaslight? The easiest one, obviously, is to avoid accountability, right? So it's not my fault. It has to be your fault. So your reality must be skewed because couldn't be me. A lot of times it is to maintain control. So if you're the one that's messing up in the relationship, then you're the one having to like fix it, and make things better. Your needs don't get met, but their needs get met. Um, so that happens a lot. Protect their image. So again, you hear from folks, and domestic violence is like a more extreme version of this, of course. You hear them talk about the person, be like, "Oh, but they're so nice. They're such a charmer." Um, so they want to keep their image. So if they're the good person, right, the nice one, meanwhile, they're like a whole terrorist at the back. Nobody knows. So when you're saying things or bringing things to their attention, they're like, "No, that's not what happened. What I was saying was X. I don't know where you got that from. I think you completely misunderstood." Um, so yeah, that's a big one, protecting their image. Also because it was modeled for them. Need to add a space there. When you grow up and you find that you lived in an environment where nobody accepted responsibility for anything, all we did was like kind of play pass the potato and everyone blamed the other. There was no accountability. They didn't have that modeled for them. And so, therefore, they don't really know how to healthily deal with conflict and that it's actually okay to take accountability when you do something that is not okay. And then also, as of course, a defense mechanism, which I think is the same as accountability or protecting their image. Um, they're going to defend their actions. They want to keep it in line with who they see themselves as and how great they are. So, therefore, it must be you. And an example of that is Jordan constantly rewrites what happened. When Sasha says she feels ignored, he says she's being clingy. He grew up avoiding emotional conversations, right? So now Jordan's basic needs are now too much. She's asking for too much. And then when he tells her she's being clingy, then she's like, oh my gosh, am I being clingy? Am I doing too much? But what's really happening is that her needs are not being met because he doesn't know how to have a vulnerable and emotional conversation. All right. So, what makes this so seductive? Because it is seductive. It starts small, right? It's often mixed with affection or charm. You may not have seen healthy relationships being modeled before. Uh, and a lot of times is you really think it's a communication issue. Did I really misunderstand what you were trying to convey? Obviously, we know that everyone has different perceptions. Was my perception of this, you know, different? Like, am I bugging? Right? Because that can happen. Miscommunications is like the number one reasons that people have conflict in relationships and need relationship therapy. So I think communication is always something that we're trying to do better at and make sure we understand when we're working with two different humans. So that really makes it um, very difficult because you're trying to resolve conflict or resolve a misunderstanding or have your needs met, and the person is saying something way off base. And because you're trying to understand it um, and be receptive to their feedback, that is like a small way of starting it. So it starts off very healthy. That's a healthy thing to do in relationships to have that kind of viewpoint and stance with communication. Unfortunately, with the wrong person, that can escalate over time. And that's why it makes it so difficult. So, an example of that is Sasha brings up how Jordan makes jokes at her expense in front of friends. He replies, you're taking it the wrong way. We just communicate differently. Over time, she starts to wonder if she's being too sensitive or if her standards are too high, right? Okay. Gaslighting shows up in the body. Gaslight is a feeling. So you're always confused, always doubting yourself, tight chest, tension in your stomach, exhaustion, right? You feel just drained after experiences with these people. And then you start to lose trust in your instincts. Like that is major red flags and something to be mindful of. So, why do we stay? One, trauma bonding. I'm sure y'all have heard of that, um, where I've shared some really like deep things with this person. They've shared deep things with me. Like, you feel like very emotionally invested, not in just the success of the relationship, but in the success of the person. You don't have a support system. So you don't have friends or a community like this to be like, girl, you're not tripping, right? This is some BS. So if you're isolated, you don't have a support system, what they say is what you're actually going to believe, what you're going to focus on. Um, Sometimes you are dependent on them, kind of similar to the trauma bonding and the support system. You're emotionally and financially dependent on that person. So it's like, okay, this is not working. I lose them, but then what? What do I do? And that's a very scary thing. So kind of the concept of the devil. Um, oh, I have lack of support system twice. Got to fix that. And the fear of starting over. And this happens a lot, I think, in monogamous relationships where we feel like we've poured and invested so much into someone that we don't want to let go. We want an ROI, we want a return on our investment. And sometimes we always just got to take the L and keep it pushing. But I added this one, hope, and it's because the person could have really wonderful traits. And the thing with gaslighting is you're like, okay, this is we're confused, we're not on the same page. There must be a way that I can explain this to you where you will understand because I know English and I think I make sense. And so you try to explain, and the hope is that they're gonna get it. They have to get it. But they just never do. They just never do. Or it takes so much work to get there where when you're trying to keep your peace, you just ignore the conversation altogether. So once they tell you you're being extra, you're doing too much, that didn't happen, you just stop pushing back and just take it because you don't want to have to go through all the drama to get them to the truth or to your truth. Okay, so let's say you have a gaslighter in your life. Because again, if it's a relationship, you can end it. If it's a family member, that could be a little tricky. And we also want to recognize and normalize that it's really hard to end relationships, and people shouldn't feel like rushed to do so. So if you do have someone like this in your life, keep a journal, right? You want to say things like, that's not how I remember it, instead of arguing the facts. Perception really is reality here. You want to set very clear emotional boundaries, right? You don't need to debate what happened, just saying, like, this is how I felt. I'd like you not to do X moving forward. And that's it. And confiding people who will validate your experience. And, that's one of the motivations about having this community so that you have that there. So, an example of this is Maya starts documenting things Dre says during arguments, and seeing these patterns help her stop questioning herself so much. And what healing can look like. So, feeling very clear in your decisions, having that trust back in your memory, in your instincts, right? Reclaiming your voice and feeling very safe to speak up without fear or just avoiding the conversation altogether. I want you to reflect on the following questions. We do have a workbook attached that will have these as well, but just to start thinking, have I been made to feel like the problem when I spoke up, right? What parts of myself do I silence in relationships? What does emotional safety and love actually feel like? And what would it mean to choose myself? Again, all of those things will be in the workbook. So wanted to thank you for joining this mini course on gaslighting. I will see you in the next video. Bye.